This is the Doubles Only Tennis Podcast, where you learn the best tips and strategies in the world to help you become a smarter, more effective tennis player. You'll hear interviews with Pro Tour doubles players and coaches, including easy-to-use lessons to improve your game and win more matches. My name is Will Bocek, founder of the Tennis Tribe, doubles strategy coach, and host of the show. Hey everyone, in this episode you are going to hear my conversation with Jorge Capestany. So Jorge is one of the top tennis coaches in the US. He lives in Michigan, and he is not only a coach, but he's also an author, an entrepreneur. He speaks at conferences all around the world, and he's actually one of only 10 coaches in the entire world who is a master professional for the USPTA and the PTR, which are two of the big tennis coaching certification organizations. So he is one of the top coaches, definitely in the country, if not the world. And this is a really fun conversation where we talk a lot about doubles. For the most part, in previous episodes, we go through a lot of questions that I have for the guest, but in this case, I emailed Jorge before the show and said, is there anything you want to talk about? And he sent me a list of 20 questions and a specific video that he said are the most important things for club level doubles players. So we go through a lot of these questions, and a lot of it has to do with doubles chemistry, with knowing your partner, knowing how to work with your partner. And then we do talk a lot about strategy. He probably has the largest library of doubles drills in the world as well. So we talk a little bit about that. And you can check out the 20 questions, check out the drills we talk about, all this stuff in the show notes. Go to thetennistribe.com/podcast, and you can find the episode there. But this is a really fun episode. I think you're going to get a lot out of this. This is probably going to end up being one of the top episodes we've done to date. And this is episode number 30. So without further ado, enjoy this conversation with Jorge Capestany. Hey everyone, welcome to today's show. We've got Jorge Capestany on for today. Jorge, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And I'm excited to have this conversation with you. We've met briefly in person, but I wouldn't say we know each other particularly well. I'm very familiar with your work, and I was reading through your bio on your website today, and there are probably very few tennis coaches that are as accomplished as you, being a coach, an author, an entrepreneur, a speaker, and on and on and on. So I wanted to start by asking if you're just like talking to somebody who you just met in an airport or at the grocery store, and they say, "What do you do?" How do you answer that question?
I think the first things that come out of my mouth is tennis coach. But
Okay.
here's what really happens. My technical job is I'm a manager of a tennis center.
Mm-hmm.
Here on the campus of Hope College in Holland, Michigan. So that's kind of like my day job, if you will. But I'm also consider myself a coach developer, because through my websites, I have two of them. The coaches one in particular, a lot of coaches call me, a lot of coaches subscribe to that for drills. So I spend a lot of my time, and I think even the USTA has us labeled as kind of coach developers, coaches who are helping other coaches.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the second way I view myself. And then I'm also a PTM director, so professional tennis management. There's only 9 programs in the whole country. Here at Hope College, we have one, and I help Adam Ford kind of mentor up and coming young new pros, which is, as you probably know, there's a huge shortage of tennis teaching pros in our country, and everybody's kind of freaking out. So the PTM is one option. So I kind of mentor those kids as well.
Okay. So it sounds like you're kind of juggling a lot of different different positions
I think
there.
More and more, I think people are recognizing me for my online work, because obviously, that's easy to get out in the world. You can make a video and thousands of people see it.
Sure.
Otherwise you have to come to Holland, Michigan and see me in person, which isn't likely. So yeah, I have a lot of the two websites, one for players, one for coaches. I think that's what gets me mostly recognized, I think, in the industry, and just
Hmm.
haven't been around forever and speaking at most of the bigger tennis conferences. I have a lot of tennis friends, put it that way.
Okay, got it. So what does a typical day or typical week look like for you now? Are you spending most of the time in the office or on the court or some
Yeah,
combination?
it's mostly in the office now. I don't teach very much anymore.
Hmm.
I'm managing. We have a big tennis center here at the college, 12 outdoor courts, 6 indoor courts. I still work on my stuff online. I still travel a fair amount, obviously less during COVID, but I would
Hmm.
be a typical year prior to COVID, I was probably traveling on average once a month going to speak somewhere.
Sure.
And I've been lucky enough to present, at all the big slams, like the U.S. Open and you know, all over the places. I've had some really cool
Right.
opportunities in Australia and Wimbledon and stuff like that. So yeah, I think most coaches, other coaches view me as probably a coach developer, someone that helps them with their drills.
Sure. Awesome. So let's take it back a little bit. What's your story? How did you get started in tennis? How did you get to kind of where you
Yeah.
are now?
Well, it's a very interesting story. I'm Cuban. I was born in
Hmm.
Havana, Cuba, in
Okay.
1962, and that's right around when all the drama was happening in Cuba, and
Yeah.
lots of families were leaving. Mine was one of them. So we were sponsored here. Every Cuban that left in '62 thought it was temporary, that they'd be going back, but obviously that didn't happen. So we were placed by a church service, and they placed us because everybody's in Miami, and there's just way too many Cubans at that
Hmm.
time for the jobs available. So they kind of told us where we could go, and we ended up in Hudsonville, Michigan, which is really here in Western Michigan. A church sponsored us there. So that's how I landed in Michigan. And then tennis wasn't on my radar until about my eighth grade. I made two friends. They moved into town. They both played tennis. They both played all the sports. Their dad was a tennis coach. Um, they were really best known for football. One of them played in the NFL for like 13 years, Ray Bentley. But Ray
Wow.
and Ron were twins, and they were my best buddies. And they got me going on tennis. So that my freshman year, in the spring, when we played here tennis in Michigan, I ditched baseball, which I've always played, and I
Yeah.
did tennis. And that's where I got to kind of have my first experience. And luckily, I wasn't very pretty looking. I had all the wrong forms, very much self-taught, but I could hustle and I competed pretty well. So I made the varsity team as a freshman at the way bottom, and
Hmm.
I got the bug, and I loved it, and I started just going from there.
Okay. So then that was freshman year of high school, and then you transitioned. At what point did you get into coaching?
Yeah, so as an immigrant family, we didn't have money like that. My dad didn't have money for me to take tennis lessons per se. It just wasn't on the radar. But I really
Hmm.
wanted to play indoors. So I had this tennis coach, Don Dickinson, who literally changed the trajectory of my life. When I first went to inquire, after my freshman year, like, hey, can I play in this indoor tennis club called Ramblewood? He was telling me all the lesson programs and stuff. And in my mind, I'm like, oof, there's no way. Um, but literally, as I walked out the door, he called me back in. He asked a few more questions, and I think he could see kind of like what the deal was that I
Yeah.
was for. So he started saying, "Look, I'll give you for $20 a month. You can do walk on. It's literal walk on. You can't even call an hour ahead of time. You got to be at the club present, and if it's open, you can play on it." So I took that deal, and I played another kid, probably the same kid, 15 sets, a week probably. We would
Yeah.
get there at 3 after school. At 4 o'clock, the junior classes started, and we just kind of did homework. At 6 o'clock, the quote unquote old people came in, all the adults, and the courts were pre-sold, but we'd wait around and see if everybody showed up, and they would. At 7 o'clock, we'd go and check again, and then maybe we'd get in the court. So we were total club rats. I lived at that club forever.
Yeah.
Did my homework there, and we played. And as that coach saw, how much I was hanging around, he started giving me responsibilities like, hey, if you clean the courts in the morning, maybe you can join one of the drill classes, which was like perfect for me. And then
Hmm.
I was sweeping clay courts and cleaning toilets and stringing rackets. And probably by my senior year in high school, he said, hey, you can maybe help me teach some of these little kids classes. And that was really my first taste to teach anything when I was in high school. And I kind of liked that. And it was, for me, a godsend, because otherwise I couldn't afford it, really, any of the tennis training that I had.
Got it. That's that's a really good story. So it sounds like just spending all that time around the club just kind of led to a teaching position, and then you continued just coaching after that. Is that?
Yeah. So that coach, he ended up being my college coach. At the time,
Okay.
Brantwood Tennis Club in 1977. We had all, like a lot of clubs, that we were the club to be at. If you were a junior player, all the good, not because of me, because of the coach. So all the kids from different schools would go there. And by that time, I was number one at my school, but there were some real studs at that club in the junior program. And we all kind of knew each other. We didn't play in the same high school team, but we belonged to the same club. So we played tournaments together. And when we were seniors, our coach, Don, came to us as a group. He got 6 of us together that were seniors. And he said, listen, I've just been offered the job at Grand Valley State University, which is right by my house. I'm just curious. I'm not inclined to do it, but how many of you 6 would like to go and keep the band together? Kind of, I'll be the coach at Grand Valley. Y'all come.
Oh, wow.
And to us, it sounded great, like, oh, so quite literally 6 out of 6 guys ended up there. And we were instantly unbelievable overnight. The guy who played number 1 singles the year before, he came back when he was a senior when we were freshmen, and he didn't even make the top 6.
Oh my gosh.
6 incomers, and we were on fire, ready to go. We won state. We went to nationals. I remember I won a round at nationals. And then the very next year, the college cancels 9 programs, and tennis was one of them. And our coach picked up and moved to Tucson, and I thought my life was over. But I stayed at Grand Valley because it's 5 miles from my house. It was cheap, and I could at least finish my degree there. So I didn't play college tennis for the last 3 years. But back then, thankfully, there were tons of adult tournaments, like little prize money tournaments for men's open. Not a lot of money, but, there's a lot of options, not like today. So I still played quite a bit. And when I was a senior in college, I was just assuming, I had a marketing degree, and I was assuming I was going to be a salesman of some sort. I had actually interviewed one time already to be a copy machine salesman, believe it or not. And right about that time, my friend from Ramblewood, my old club, called and said, look, he was the director of tennis, a good buddy of mine. He just became the manager and needed to replace himself. So he said, would you like to be, the director of tennis here at age 22, when I didn't have not that much teaching experience. But I took it thinking, well, I'll just do it for a couple of years. It'll be a fun start. And here I am 40 years later, still.
Yeah, that's how it goes. I know several coaches who have a similar story where it's like, oh, I planned on it for a few years after college, and then I just loved it and kept doing it.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think, I was quite lucky. I developed some really good players early on. 3 of them ended up winning gold balls. And if you know anything about, if you're a tennis teaching pro and you do that, then everybody tends to come to you and they think you're the hottest thing, which I really wasn't. I think I always say to people, I'm totally aware of how lucky I was, because 2 of those national champions, they just, they were very good. I'm not sure I helped them that much, but I helped somewhat, I'm sure. But they lived by the club. I mean, if they lived somewhere else, I probably wouldn't have had those. And then I wouldn't have had this rush all my life of people coming to my club from far away. So I think, I'm humble about it, because I know very easily they could have lived an hour away, and I would have never had them on my radar. And I wouldn't have become known as the high performance coach in town back then. And my teaching career might have veered different.
Yeah. I mean, luck always plays a role, but you have to be able to take advantage of the luck when it falls your way. So definitely credit to you. So I want to transition into some doubles strategy.
Yeah.
Before each show, I always email my guests and I say, hey, if there's anything you want to talk about, let me know and I'll make sure I bring it up. And you emailed me 2 different things. One is 20 questions for your doubles partner.
Right.
And the other one is the doubles partner mojo video. And before we get into each of those specifically, I read through them and then I watched the video, the mojo video. And the thing that struck me was, I asked you, I gave you an outline of, hey, we're going to talk about double strategy. We might touch on volley technique. And the two pieces of content you sent me were about chemistry with your partner. It had nothing to do with how to play doubles. It had nothing to do with how to hit a better volley or serve strategy, anything like that. It was all about getting to know your partner and communicating with your partner. So talk a little bit about that.
So obviously I've been teaching for 40 years and I've taught tons of USTA teams. Mm-hmm. These are all 3-0 to 4-5 for the most part. Mm-hmm. Probably thousands of doubles teams, right? And it didn't take me long to figure out that the teams that did the best, obviously you have to have some skills, shot skills. You got to be able to put your serve a good location, transition. The other thing I'll say, just as a side note, my own coaching of tennis doubles has changed dramatically. I was raised by a coach that you served and volleyed, and that was it. And if you didn't do it, you weren't going to play. This is back in the 70s, right?
Sure.
And preferably you hit a return and came in as well. Well, for the first decade, I insisted on that all the time. And an interesting side note that I coached this girl named Linda Tran. She ended up winning the girls 18s national indoor doubles championships. She got a gold ball out of it. And she volleyed with two hands, which I would have never thought I could handle. And she didn't always come to the net. She was Linda was a Vietnamese immigrant family, and she was 5'5", maybe. Not physically what you'd think would be a great doubles, but she could return and she put her serve where she wanted. So I recognize now that doubles has changed a lot. So my days of just insisting that every 3-0, 3-5, 4-0, whatever, I don't care what level you're going to the net, I don't do that anymore, because even if you watch the pros, they don't do that necessarily. The game's evolved, so I have to be, aware of that. A few years ago, I was at the U.S. Open, and I counted 100 women's. This is U.S. Open women's doubles, right? So it's not like low level. And I counted 100 points. I had a little chart on my thing, and I said, I'm just going to watch like 20 of these points, move over here, watch 20 of that match, 20. And I counted out of 100 points how many times they served and volleyed. And it was one time. One time I had it was Martina Hingis did it. And she was playing with Smyrny her partner, that were number one in the world. So obviously, if I'm going to take the position that you got to serve volley, that's way off. So, but without a doubt, you have to have some skills. But the best teams are the ones that have this chemistry. They get along good. It's a good fit. I loved playing doubles. I was pretty successful as a doubles player. I had different partners, but it was real clear to me who I could play with and who I couldn't. So that's why I kind of developed this 20 question thing, because, I've never coached a collegiate team per se. There was a couple of years where I was the varsity or the assistant college coach here at Hope College, and my daughter played on the team, and Adam Ford, one of my own students, he was the coach. So that's about as close as I've, been to coaching the collegiate team, high school or otherwise. But these 20 questions are universal. So basically what I try to do if I'm coaching a USTA team, which I don't do that much anymore, if I was coaching any team, I would sit both partners down with me probably, and they'd each have a piece of paper with all 20 questions, and we just sit there maybe a whole hour. Like I might even do a private lesson, say, for today's private lesson, because I'm working with this doubles team, this is what we're doing. I don't care if you're not going to hit a single ball. And I'd love to go over some of those. I think you're going to post it so people can get access to it in the show notes. But, some of these are pretty obvious things you should be asking and stuff. But I found that over 50% of the questions, partners admit, well, no, I don't even know that
thought about it.
Partner. I never thought about it.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know if you want me to go through them or not, but
I've highlighted probably 10 or so that I'd like to ask you about.
Sure.
And for anybody listening, we will include a link to this in the show notes, so they can go to thetennistribe.com/podcast and find the episode. And we'll have it linked there. But let's go ahead and start going through a couple of these. So the first one is pretty basic. Do you like to play the ad or the deuce side? How do you think about that? How do you recommend people kind of talk through that?
Well, I think it's, to me, the big question is who can best return a backhand from the deuce side, that inside out backhand for most two-handers.
Right.
A lot of times that's the main question I, as a coach, want to know. Like, I personally did not do that very well. That skill, I had a one-hander. I had to hit it kind of late to get it to go inside out, and it wasn't my strength at all. Right.
Sure.
So I could chip and do the other things. But for me, that's kind of the question. So I might, if I were coaching us, it was you and me, Will, playing as a doubles team. That's the number one question to help decide who plays the deuce or ad, is I'm going to look at who's best at that inside out backhand return. Because if you play at a higher level, they're going to probably be picking on that shot. And I know for years when I played the deuce side, I stunk it up because I just wasn't very good at it. So that's kind of how I personally coach my players to think about it.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I've never heard it put like that before, but it does make sense. Like I actually typically play the ad side, but when I play with players who have a one-hander, it seems like they tend to struggle with that on the deuce side.
Yeah. Some people,
and they end up resorting to a lob or like a chip return or something.
That was me, by the way. I sacrificed a lot of partners by hitting a chip return lob that wasn't good enough, and they're eating an overhead. But yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people don't look at. They kind of, everybody has a preference, but that will be the number one helper to decide.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that I just want to mention, and I don't want to spend too much time on any one question, but I've talked to, last week or a few weeks ago, I talked to Coach Steve Smith, and he talked about how on the deuce side, that player is going to be hitting more balls. They're going to get more returns. So the myth or the idea that the better player needs to play the ad court, that may not be true. That's kind of more of a myth. So people should keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Just statistically speaking, because there's always you always start in the deuce. It's just the rule. And you may or may not finish on the ad. So at the end of the day, and it might be an extra 20 shots, an extra 10 shots.
Yeah, it definitely could. Yeah, absolutely. So number two, what would you like me to say or do after you miss an easy shot? And number three, similar, what would you like me to say or do after you make a double fault? Yeah.
So imagine, again, the way I use this is, and I really would encourage people to print this off and sit, especially if you have a regular partner. So the reason I have those questions in particular is because everybody defaults to a certain way with when your partner makes a mistake. Okay. Most people, when your partner makes a mistake, your natural instinct is to, oh, it's okay, Will, no problem. Okay. So that's me sending that information. Some people, when your partner makes a mistake, I don't recommend this, but some people say, oh, I'm going to tell Will what he did wrong. Hey, Will, keep your elbow up, which very few people like on the receiving end. They don't really want to hear that.
Right.
Or the third thing is some people are kind of quiet. They don't say anything. And that can be misinterpreted as, oh, gosh, I just double faulted. Will didn't even look at me. He just walked straight across the net.
Yeah.
He must be mad at me. Because, and so I asked specifically, okay, so let's pretend it's you and me. I say, Will, if you choke an easy overhead or if you miss a shot, what exactly do you want me to do? You want a high five? You want me to leave you alone? You want encouragement? Maybe you want instruction, doubtful, but let's have a talk about it and get on the same page, because so many times without that question being answered, there's all sorts of doubles points being played across the whole universe where people are slightly agitated because the partner is doing one thing and they never had a sit down to say, okay, here's kind of what I think I like. So for me, I would answer that question. The best thing you can do for me is just give me a high five and tell me, shake it off, no problem, here we go. Give me some encouragement. I definitely don't feel like getting a technical piece of advice. And I certainly don't want to feel like you're mad at me. So don't ignore me, but just give me, you got this. Here we go. Well, high five. Come on, get the next one. Simple as that. But You'd be shocked how many people don't really know what their partner wants and they just do what they default to.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd imagine that's the most common response. Like, hey, shake it off. Let's focus on the next point. That's what most people would want. I do see, and it's weird. I've talked about this on a previous episode, but I see sometimes in mixed matches, especially if the guy's better than the girl, if it's like a 9-0 match and there's a 5-0 guy and a 4-0 girl, the guy will start coaching the girl. And it's something that guys have in them where they just can't help themselves and they're trying to coach technique in the middle of a match. And I've seen it happen against teams, with teams that I played against. And I've literally won matches because the guy just puts so much pressure on his partner. And it doesn't have to be mixed, but it's definitely coaching technique. I definitely do not advise in the middle of a match. That's
virtually no one wants that on the receiving end. If you ask 100 tennis players, how many of you like it if you miss, your partner tells you what you did wrong technically, and not a hand goes up usually.
No, not during a match. That's not the time to be working on that. So that's a really good one. People definitely go back and talk with your partner about that, because when I play these, I still play USTA leagues and tournaments, and I'll see so many players not on the same page as their partner. And it seems like from the sidelines, I've even seen some like net players shake their head after their partner double faults, which is obviously the wrong response. But super, super important there. So next question, do you want to use signals or not? So let's talk about signaling.
Yeah. So obviously some teams use it, some use it extensively, some don't use it at all. But I've had partners that never talked about it. So one says, well, here's my signals. Here's what I'll do. And internally, the other person's like, oh, sheesh, God, this is more of a hassle. This doesn't help me. I'm trying to get my serve in now. I got to worry. You're telling me where to serve. I just want to serve at the box. So it's very much worth a discussion of whether the team in general wants to use signals. I've had teams that say, when I'm serving, I like you to do signals. And the partner says, okay, when I'm serving, I'd rather not. And they have some hybrid thing. But most good teams are using some sort of signals, and they can be really elaborate or really simple. I've used everything. I've had partners that prefer not to do signals at all. I have partners that would give me 3 types of things, like thumb out meant poaching, thumb in not, and then they give me numbers for where to serve, and if their hand was flashing, it meant kick serve. So that's one extreme, and the other extreme is like, screw it, I'm not going to do any of this stuff. Let's just play straight up, and I don't want to have this extra burden of thinking about signals. So again, it's worth asking, and it's okay if it's different per player. But what's not good, what I would warn you about, is just like assuming the other partner wants signals or doesn't, when they kind of secretly do. So again, it's just a talk. That's why sitting down and writing this stuff down on this very sheet of paper is so epically helpful. It's changed a lot of teams that's gone from struggling to just having tons more fun, because this is, even if they're not winning more, it's just more fun because we're on the same stinking page.
Yeah, we're finally on the same page and we know what each other want. So do you think signals depends a little bit on skill level too? You can imagine the 3-0 players aren't calling their serve locations versus 4-5, 5-0.
Yeah, I found that for sure. I think the higher the skill level, the more likely their signals and the more likely they're complicated. And then all the way down to like, if I have a 3.0 newish player, I'm not sure I even recommend signals for them, other than maybe I'm going to fake or poach and just leave it at that, but definitely not serve location or spin or any of that kind of stuff. But I do think it's skill dependent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for people who haven't used signals in the past and you're at that maybe 4.0 to 4.5 level, I would probably encourage you to start experimenting with it. Even if you're not comfortable with it, because once you do get to a certain skill level, and tell me if you disagree, Jorge, but I do think it helps. If you're, if you're at a certain skill level, you're better off at least talking. It doesn't even have to be signals, about where you're going to serve and what the net player is going to do.
Yeah, later on when we talk about that partner module thing, we'll have an alternative to signals, which is basically verbal. You replace it with just discussions and strategizing.
Yeah.
Doesn't help you between serves if you're going to change. But yeah, I would say that the higher you go in skill level, if you go to the pros, I think it's my impression that almost all the pro levels teams are doing some sort of signaling, some sort of communicating.
Or talking,
whether it's elaborate or simple. But yeah, I think I do think it. I wouldn't do it just because you think it'll help, but I would say it this way: I do think that the better teams do it, and I do think it's helpful, provided you have the skill to pull it off. That.
Right.
That's why I don't insist on a 3-0 team to do it, because even though I know overall it helps, it may not help that level. If now they're worried about, oh, my partner's going to go, I can't hit a puppy cake now. They're going to eat it, and I get all this garbage in their head, and then they're playing worse all of a sudden.
Right. Yeah, it adds another layer of pressure. So number 5, who do you think should serve first when we play? So how should we think about that?
So it's tricky because I think the mistake people make is, well, whoever has the better serve should serve first.
Yeah.
And I think the better question is whoever holds serve more often should serve first. And people will go, well, isn't that the same thing? Almost, but not exactly, because I'm a good example. I never had a super power serve. I had a really good location. I had a nice little kick serve. So I was like the pitcher that didn't have a great fastball, but I could move it around and I could sabotage people. I never let the opponent get something they like. But power I wasn't getting a lot of free points, put it that way. I played for many years with Mike Woody. And Mike Woody is a doubles partner of mine, and he had a big booming serve. Okay, so on paper, you would say, okay, Woody should serve. But the problem was, I was good at the net, but Woody was amazing at the net. So really the better question is not who has the better serve or the harder serve, but who holds serve more often, which is encompasses a wider, thing, like, who can place it better. A lot of it, if I'm stinky at the net, like I blow it all the time for my partner, maybe I should not be at the net first. I should serve first.
Right.
Partner can do more damage because he was better at the net than me. So I think that's the big thing with question number 5 is a lot of people just don't,
they don't consider the net player.
Yeah, really. They don't consider the better question, which is not who serves quote unquote better, but who holds serve more often, which is a different thing,
Yeah. I've played a number of mixed matches the last 3, 4, 5 years where some of them are even 8-0, and I'm a 4-5. I'm playing with a 3-5 partner, and I'll get broken twice during the match. My partner will never get broken because I'm so active at the net, forcing so many missed returns. Exactly. And if I served right there next to my partner, I have a much better serve, but it doesn't matter. We get broken so much more often. So,
and if your opponents have good strategy, and let's say I'm a 5-0 player playing with a 4-0 player, they're probably not going to return back to the 5-0 player. They might lob the 4-0 player a lot, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, that didn't work out how I thought, because they're smart and they're kind of playing the weaker side.
There's a lot of layers to that. So the next question that I highlighted, I'm going to skip 6 and 7 and then move on to like 8 through 10. So you've got, what should our plan A be when we play? And then 9 is what should our plan B when we play? And then plan C. So talk about how to craft these kind of plan A, B, and C.
Yeah. So the reason I have them separate is because I want people to be able to write down, like question 8 is what should be our plan A when you and I play together. So what I'm trying to get at there is, are we going to stay back? Are we going to be attacking? Are we coming in on first serves? Are we attacking second serves? What is it we're going to do? Are we basically going to sit back and play a lot of defense and let them self-destruct? Or maybe they don't self-destruct. They don't make a lot of errors. So maybe we got to go to the other side of the scale where we got to go in and we got to take it versus waiting for them to give it. So whatever it should be identified. Hey, we should start playing this way for plan A. And then I say, let's assume now that, let's say you and I, we're playing and we decide that, hey, we're going to serve volley and we're going to chip and come in because against this team, we think that's going to work. And then we're down 1-4 and we're realizing, okay, that didn't work. Missing my overheads. This guy's passing shots are amazing. There's no easy volleys. Everything's kind of down below net level. So then you would want to know already plan B. You don't want to be figuring it out at 1-4. You should already know and say, okay, let's shift to plan B, which is now for this one, we're only going to come in on our first serve, and we're only going to come in on their second serve. And we play that way for a while. Or you say, let's just play one up, one back. And I think we can out ground stroke these guys because they're not great poachers.
Sure.
Then you go that for a while, and then you assess it. And let's say worst case, that didn't work either. Then you're going to have a plan C. So what's a plan C? Let's just both be back. Our college coach taught us this way of playing, but he called it just like double back attack, which it was me and my partner would just drop back. We spent a ton of time doing this weird drill where, how when you warm up, I feed you an overhead, you kind of stroke it at me and I pop it back up for you. We did that as a drill for like 20 minutes a day. So it was a weird skill, but our ability to take overheads and lob them back was unbelievable. Everybody on my team could do that great. And I don't know if that was by design by him, but it ended up being that way. We do this quote unquote warm up drill for 25 minutes sometimes. And we're like, what the hell? When can we play? But at the end of the day, I won tons of matches I took so many guys, quote unquote, put away overheads and could dig them out. And they had another one, I dig it out. By the third one, they're choking. And now they lost the point and they're mad.
Yeah.
So that could be another thing. But I think you have to have an A, B, and a C in your head, ready to go. And I think what most people do this mistake, they either don't have any plan. Let's just go and play. So Will, you're serving volley today? You don't normally do that. So they're kind of winging it. Or they have just the A, and then when that don't work, they never discuss what B or C would be.
Right.
So to me, the three ways I would probably choose is either you're going to be kind of, let's say plan A is an attacking plan. Plan B might be one up, one back, and see if that works for you. And plan C is double back attack. Those would be three nice options. You should be able to, you might have a favorite.
Sure.
Not only you probably will have a favorite, but you should be able to deploy all three of those things so that you can win against a wider variety of styles of doubles teams.
Yeah. And it sounds like the important thing here is not even necessarily to have a particular plan, like this plan's better than that plan, but just to have a plan, right? So that once you get down, 4-1 or a set and a break or whatever it is, you don't just keep doing the same thing, because that's probably the most common thing or the most common mistake I see at club level doubles is I'll see these teams that are down 5-2 in the first set and they change absolutely nothing. And they feel like it's just, my volleys are just off today, and it's like, okay, well, if your volleys are off, you need a new plan because your volleys aren't working, but they just hope their volleys are going to come back, or whatever it might be.
Thing. I think you're totally right there. Plan A, I think a lot of people think, well, the best way to play doubles is to attack.
Sure.
And that's totally team dependent. That could be the worst way to play for some doubles teams.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, I think everybody should, like for me, to be honest, probably my best doubles wins were not when I consider myself an attacker. I came in, that was pretty good. That was my plan A for most of the time. But some of the best wins are because of my plan C, when I was able to go back and dig it. Like we play these two brothers, which are friends of ours, Fritz and Bro Ballantyne. They were number one in the Midwest forever. I played them a million times. It was always close. They always beat us. But the best results we had against them wasn't serving and volleying. It's when we did some of that, but it's when we stayed back and dug out balls, that gave us our best chance against that particular team.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So the important thing here, again, is just really to be flexible and recognize on the court, okay, this isn't working. Let's move on to the next plan.
Right.
Yes. Super important there. Before I move on to the next one, I have to ask about that drill. Do you still teach that, or have coaches do
Yeah,
that
so
drill?
I think I do it when I did privates. I haven't, that was a regular thing that I did during
Uh-huh.
privates. Um, and I felt that it sneakily helps my players get
Yeah.
consistent overhead. Um, those two words don't go together, consistent overhead.
Hmm.
But I wanted all my players, you get an overhead, you make it. This, you can
Yeah.
spin it, you can crunch it, you can put, not over all overheads are putaways, right? If you're hitting it from zone 4 way back near the baseline, I don't even know if it's the right plan to try to put that away in a double smash. You might just want to spin that back in and get in better position. But
Sure.
it's an unbelievable drill. It's almost, people don't even think of it as a drill because, oh, you mean warm up? This is what I do during a warm up match. I'm going to
Yeah.
lob to you. But if you do that, and by the way, you could play that straight ahead with a buddy and put a scoreboard on it. It's a heck of a game. It'd be one of the
Yeah.
best games we could ever do. Will's at the net. I'm at the baseline. I lob you. Boom. We play it out. Um,
Yeah.
and then next thing, I'm going to learn these things like you hit an overhead, I'll probably drive the next one. Then you close back in, I might lob again. So all these counter punching skills and keeping it high, keeping it low, and just being able to make the net guy hit more than one shot is a super important skill that I think a lot of people just overlook.
Yeah. And it sounds like that would be particularly helpful for that kind of 3-5 USTA level, because there's so many teams that lob. So if you can really work on your overhead, um, it seems like it would help a lot. So question 12, what can I do on the court to help your confidence stay high?
Yeah. So I usually, when again, imagine me sitting with a doubles team, or we're asking these questions of each other. Usually they go, oh, what do you mean by that? And basically what I'm trying to do is build up my partner all the time, right? So what most people, I kind of walk them through that question a little bit. And almost always the answer is, well, just stay positive. Give me positive energy. Give me compliments. Keep me encouraged. The worst thing is silence.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a little side note. I have it here on my notes of things I want to cover, but it's kind of timely.
No, go
Um,
ahead.
if you coach tennis or play doubles for a long time, this happens all the time. Usually it's a USTA league team, right? And they're competitive. They got teams, and there'll always be a person, a player on the team, whether it's a male team or female team, that no one wants to play doubles with. So and so, Joe.
Yes,
Smith,
there
okay?
is. Yeah.
Everybody has a Joe Smith. No one wants to play with him. Then you kind of dig into like, well, what is it about Joe Smith that they do? And I'm going to tell you the story. It was so helpful, and I say it all the time. So I had this at my old club. This is probably 20 years ago. It was a person that no one wanted to play with.
Mhm.
And when I asked, well, why don't you want to play with this person? They're mean. She's always mad. She makes me nervous. I don't play well with her. So I watched a few times, and what I noticed was happening
Mhm.
was this player that no one liked to play with, they were super quiet. They didn't give encouragement, nor did they give, like,
Negative
they
feedback.
didn't roll
Yeah.
their head and like, drop their shoulders when you double faulted.
Yeah.
All they really did was remain quiet. And it dawned on me as a coach, you know what? When someone is quiet, people, we're insecure for the most part,
Yeah.
right?
We beat
So
ourselves up.
when I make a mistake and Will's my partner and he doesn't get mad, but he doesn't also encourage, he just like nothing. He's just vanilla. It won't take long for the person that made the error to start getting a little, oh my gosh, Will must be bad. That's just
Yeah.
the way our weak people, we're weak people. We're kind of inferior. We're nervous. So, and then
Yeah.
I double fault and you just walk across the net. And I'm like, so I talked to this lady, well, I said it's a lady. I talked to them. I said, look, um, I want to bring something up to you. I think when you do this and you don't acknowledge somebody or encourage somebody,
Mhm.
and this lady who was the one that no one wanted to play with, when I told her this, she was in shock. She goes, "What? People? What? I never have ever said anything negative to anybody. I never do that. I promise you." And I go,
Right.
"That's the point. The fact that you never say anything. I'm not accusing you of saying negative things like you're hey, why'd you miss that? Well, your serve sucks. They're
Right.
not, she wasn't that, but she needed to understand when you're quiet, the default position of many doubles people is, "Oh, my partner's mad," especially if you're quiet after they make easy mistakes.
Right.
So she learned something like, oh, well, I never looked at it that way. I said, let's put
Mm-hmm.
it the other way. Let's just imagine you were playing with me. I'm quite a bit better than you. You double fault. What normally happens? Well, you would say, hey, here we go. Come on, give me a high five, give me a ball. But what if you double faulted 3 times in the game and I never even looked back at you?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think that you're probably, oh, he must be mad? So that was kind
Right.
of an eye opener for me. And I tell that story because sometimes people, you do have the other extreme where the person just genuinely mean, like, no one wants to play with
Sure.
Sam is like a jerk and he's arguing calls all the time. And every time you make a mistake, he rolls his eyes. Well, that's different. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that is a huge thing that I think, again, we're
Mm-hmm.
talking chemistry and personality types and all this kind of stuff, but it's doubles and it's a 2-person game. And none
Yeah.
of this really matters in singles, but it totally matters when there's more than one person.
Yeah. That's a really good story. Yeah. People should yeah, I mean that's a really good takeaway of just like kind of how we immediately go to like a negative thought in our head,
Yeah.
if our partner is being silent, and that in this case that lady
And by the way,
wasn't trying to be mean at all.
yeah,
She's just
she was shocked. She was like,
yeah,
never
yeah.
in my life. And I said, I'm not accusing you of saying that good stuff, but that's why we go through this exercise, right? Because some of the first few questions is like, what do you want me to say? What do you not want me to say? So, I would say,
Hmm.
don't ignore me. That's
Yeah.
going to make me feel anxious. And maybe you're not mad, but I'm going to think you're mad because you're not making eye contact. And I just made 2 double faults. So that all gets taken care of in this process. This is, if you play with a regular doubles partner and you don't go through these 20 questions, you're missing out on a whole bunch of strategy and enjoyment for sure. This is the best thing I do for our doubles teams in the history of
Yeah.
like 40 years of coaching. Well, nothing's close.
So let's go through one more question here. And honestly, I'm a little curious about why you worded it this way. Number 18, should we always elect to receive when we win the toss?
Yeah.
Why didn't
So
you put serve there?
yeah, because I wanted people to think outside the box. So,
Okay.
but basically, I know even statistically, you could probably prove this that there's teams that I've coached that they win more games when they're receiving than they do when they're serving.
Hmm.
Um, this is usually lower skilled teams. It doesn't normally happen at a 4-5 or 5-0 level because those serves are pretty developed there. But sometimes even a 3-5 team, which is a pretty good player, they do worse when they're serving than when they're receiving. Okay. So I want them to consider and say, look, what are we going to do? For us, I never received when I won the toss when I was young. Okay. It was just nothing I would consider. I knew it was a possibility, but it's like, why wouldn't I serve? That's an advantage to be serving. It wasn't until later, and you see how much it happens at the pro level, that people say, I'm going to receive. And I'm like, what? But, why would they do that?
Yeah.
And there's a whole, you can debate all kinds of reasons, but put it this way, I've had 3-0 teams, men and women, that have gone for decades and always just served because they thought that's what they should do. And then when you
Mhm.
do some mass charting, you say, well, you won 12 games, 8 of them of those games where you were returning. Really? Yeah, you didn't hold serve very often, but you're actually better. And so in that example, if that happens over and over, you should know. You should be aware of it.
Right.
Um, and I just think the default thing for a lot of players, club players, is like, well, I heard about that. I don't think that I should probably serve. Or
Yeah.
you do have some people who their opinion of the serve is so bad, like I have the worst serve ever, so I just always receive, and
Hmm.
shouldn't necessarily do that always, as
Either.
well.
Yeah. That's interesting. So um I've always told people to serve, and honestly, I need to get some of the data on this because I think Warren over at Tennis Analytics has it. So I need to get it from him for 3.0, 3.5, and figure it out, because I'd always felt like, no matter the level, even if it's 55% of the time you're holding serve, I always just felt like you should always serve. Like, even if one player has a worse serve, the other one's got to be decent. But it sounds like maybe that's not true. And I don't know. I guess people should really just chart it for themselves. Like, after each match, write down, how many times you won each.
The first place I ever heard this was in Brad Gilbert's book, which I think is Winning Ugly. Mm-hmm. He's got a couple versions out of that now. But I remember reading the first one. He said he almost said you should always receive first.
Should always receive,
yeah. But, and, he has some reasons. That's when you're not quite warmed up physically. So you're not probably playing as good the first game as you are in the second game.
Yeah.
I had some good logic to it. Obviously, if you're Isner and your serve is like ridiculous weapon, then you probably don't do that. Because it's just better statistically. But it should be measurable. People should be able to know. I guarantee you, if you ask, your average 3.0 to 4.0 club doubles player, how often, what rate are you holding serve? 50%, 6%, 40%? It's gonna be a total guess.
Yeah.
They're gonna think it's higher than it really is, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to have Warren on soon. So I'm going to get that data, and we're going to figure that out for any of the listeners. Keep an eye out for that episode.
Yeah.
Awesome. So again, we're going to link to the doubles questions. There's more than the ones we just talked about. We just went over probably 6 or 7 of them, but we're going to link to the 20 doubles questions so people can go over that with their partner. And then you also sent me the doubles partner Mojo video. So let's talk about that here for a little bit. Yeah.
So a long time ago, a famous sports psychologist, Dr. Jim Loehr, I'm sure you're aware of him. He was the guru. He was the first guy that really did some research and helped people mentally. Tennis sports psychologist, if you will. He's worked with all the greats, Sampras and all those guys back in the day. He's still around. I consider him a friend. He's a hero of mine. Partly because I struggle so much with mental stuff. And when I first heard some of his data and some of his teachings, it helped me so much. And of course, now I teach it. So he came up with this thing called the 16-second cure. And what he realized is that to observe mental toughness during a match, it's really difficult to see mental toughness during the point itself. Like when the ball's going back and forth, you don't see it. But as soon as that point ends and before the next one, so that between point time, that's when people show their body posture, they're angry. You can tell real quickly. Sometimes you can be 8 courts away, and just by looking down there, not even hearing it, you can say, that guy's losing, that guy's winning. You can just tell by their body posture. So he didn't so much invent it as much as discovered it. He just watched matches and matches and finally just started paying attention just to the between point. So I hadn't seen anything about that for doubles. So I thought, what's the between point rituals for doubles? Sometimes I refer to it as traffic patterns, because I tell my doubles teams, imagine you're playing doubles in a sandbox. So you're leaving footprints like on the beach. Where would that traffic go? When you're doing it poorly, the server's going to be going back and forth on the baseline, and the net guy will be doing the same thing at the net. In other words, they're not coming together ever. So I started doing my own kind of research years ago. And I noticed, there's just like Jim Loehr in the mental, in the 60-second cure, there's 4 parts: positive physical response, relaxation, preparation, and rituals. That's what the best do between points. Here's what I discovered for the best doubles teams, and think Bryan Brothers or any good doubles team. I still refer to it as 4 parts. So part 1, let's say you and I are playing well. The point's done. Great winner, screwy mistake, doesn't matter. Part 1 is we make eye contact. We find each other on the court. All right. I see you. I don't turn away from you. I make eye contact and we look at each other. Part 2 is we come together. So let's say you're serving and you're in no man's land and I was at the net. I'm going to come together. I'm going to come to you physically. I'm going to do some kind of physical touch. It's part 2. So tapping your shoulder, knuckle bump, whatever. There's going to be some physical touch. And then part 3, I call it the planning or the strategizing. imagine, like I walk you back to the service line or to the baseline because you're going to get ready to serve. I walk you back and we're whispering to each other, hey, try it. I want to see a kick serve to his back here. I'm going to poach. That's where those are verbal signaling instead of actual signaling. And then part 4 is the reset. So I sprint, I leave you, I sprint back to my net position, I get ready, and we repeat. Point goes out of play on the next one. We find each other. I come to you, I punch your shoulder, I walk you back, I release. And that, all you have to do is watch the Bryan brothers who basically did this. I don't know if they were taught this, but anytime the team is doing well, they're playing well, and they're having fun, they're doing this. Okay.
Right.
And the exact opposite is those two ships in the night. The net guy just walks to the other side, and the server walks to the other side. They're never coming together. The fun factor is down, and this is what's cool. You can actually practice this. This is, we play points, and I say we're gonna play points, and I'm gonna film or I'm gonna watch you do the 4 parts between points. We're literally practicing the between points performance, and I say performance because obviously during the point there's a performance, but people think the time between the point is a rest period. It's just another performance. You're still performing, doing these rituals. And
right.
If you can do those 4 things, even if you don't win, you're going to have so much more fun, and you're going to be so much more a pleasant partner for everybody.
Yeah, people want to play with you.
I'd like to say I invented it, but I kind of discovered it too, by just watching the best doubles teams.
Yeah.
This has saved people. This has saved some teams to know this and to actually practice it. And sometimes I'll film it just on my phone, and when it's not going good, and I can show it to people, and the guy who's not doing it goes, "Oof,
I shouldn't have done that." Yeah,
I can see where he might think I'm mad right there. So it's really good coaching.
Yeah, and it seems like in doubles, it's got to be more important. Obviously, you can't be fist bumping and stuff in singles, but in doubles, your job's not only to play good yourself, but also to, and this has to do with the questions, right? To help your partner play good and lift them up and lift their, make them stay positive. So all of this chemistry, physical touch, talking to each other. It makes perfect sense that that's going to help.
I did make that video, so I think you're going to post that, but watch that video, guys, and just do a self-assessment of how good you are or are not at these between point skills. This is a game changer. If you can get good at this, everybody will want to play with you, and almost always your play will be better.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Everybody will want to play with you because you're going to be constantly encouraging your partner. And I would say, I feel like in practice matches, I definitely don't always do this because, I might be tired or my knee's hurting and I don't want to walk back to the baseline. But if people can really focus on this, if this is new to you, at least focus on it in the big matches or in the tiebreakers, things like that. In a lot of matches, what I do myself is I'll signal during most of the match, but if we get in a tight spot, need a big point, we're in a tiebreaker, I'm at the baseline and I'm talking every single point. So definitely on a lot of the bigger points, this should be required, if not all the time.
That's right.
So I'll link to that for everyone in the show notes, as well as the 20 questions we talked about. And then I want to ask a few other questions on double strategy and then get into some rapid fire questions here at the end. So let's talk about lobbing. We talked a little bit about that drill you mentioned earlier, but at this 3.0, 4.0 level, one of the most common questions I get from listeners of the show is, I struggle against teams that lob. How should they think about that from a strategic standpoint?
So I got 2 comments. The opening comment is just that so many people report that they hate playing against lobbers. Okay.
Yeah.
So my pet peeve is when a person doesn't learn to lob. Like I want all my players to be above average with their lobbing skills because it's a good bang for your buck. Because here's what's involved. Most lobbing skills, I'm just blocking the ball. It's low risk. Okay. And in return, by the very definition of what I'm doing, I'm taking this little short stroke that I could probably master inside of a half hour if I got a good coach. And the other guy's timing an overhead, which is inherently dangerous. So anytime a lob, I think it's a high risk, low risk proposition. The guy who's lobbing has low risk. The guy who's hitting the overhead has higher risk. Now, there is a skill level, 4.5 or 5.0, that everybody's overheads are so well developed that it's no longer a liability. But I'm going to tell you that the most 3.5 players that I've coached I would not classify them as having strong overheads. I'd say it's more of a liability than strength. And half the 4.0s are in the same boat.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty friggin' high level. And you lob them. I'm not talking like a sitter on top of the net they can pound down your throat. I'm talking put them on or behind the baseline, and it's not good for them. So that's the first thing. It's a pet peeve of mine that people, well, I don't lob. I'm not a lobber. I'm not a pusher. But then the other probably now on the receiving end, right? So let's talk about the complaint, and it's legit. I've seen a lot of my teams lose to lobbers. Okay. It could two major reasons people don't handle the lob very well. First one is a technique, right? So they're not getting under it. They're kind of they don't have that what I call quarterback footwork, where you take the snap, you start moving backwards, but your eyes are forward. So get that trophy position. That's a skill that's not easy. And I think overheads are frankly under practice. You don't hit 200 overheads in a match. You might get 5 or 10 max. You might get 1,000 ground strokes, right? So by nature, it's a shot that is under practice. And then if you're scared of the net, you don't go. Now you might play a whole singles match without 0 overheads, so that you're not getting touches on the ball to have that shot mature enough. The second thing is it's a timing issue. And I can't tell you about timing. You have to experience timing. So whether it's a ball machine or me feeding it, you got to just time it. Your timing, if you can get your mind to be quiet and let your body just figure it out, usually it goes pretty good after 10 minutes or so. Most people, especially high schoolers, you feed them and they shank the first 5. They're so their mind is just wailing on their body. You suck. You're the worst. And they can't. It's like someone was doing that from the sideline. You couldn't deal with it, right? But they do it to themselves. So you just quiet the mind. Maybe you're mistiming them. You're shanking a lot, but your body will figure things out if you just let it, and the mind doesn't come in there and kind of cause havoc. Then the third thing is a strategy reason, which is they're trying the wrong thing from where they are. So there's all types of overhead. So I like to divide the court up into zones 1 through 4. So zone 1 is the nearest the net. So imagine the service box cut in half from halfway up all the way to the net. That's zone 1. So if my feet are in zone 1 and I'm hitting an overhead, I should be angling that off, and I should be winning that. You're green there. You're trying to finish it. Now let's go to zone 2. So I'm a little further back. I'm still inside the service line. That's still a green overhead. You should still be able to hit that offensively. Maybe you hit a winner, maybe not. All right. Now let's go back to zone 3, which is imagine no man's land cut in half. Now you're in that little 9 foot behind the service line and halfway to no man's land. Now it's yellow. That is a total yellow overhead. I don't care how good you are, unless you're a pro. You should not be trying a green overhead there where you're trying to end it. And if your feet are in zone 4, you're in trouble, dude. This is not an easy shot just because it's lumped into the category overhead. So people don't break it down enough, in my opinion. They go well, overhead smash. It has the word smash right in the name. So no matter what, I could be tripping in zone 4 or really easy. I'm just going to wail on it. I'm going to swing 10 out of 10 on my power scale. So if you don't make the right thing, obviously the more skilled you get, you can do more offense from, zone 3 and zone 4 back there. But so many errors that I see are people get lobbed into zone 3 and they didn't get under it, or they did get under it and they just overplayed it. I mean, they tried to hit a 10 on the power. They should have hit a 7, and their timing was off. So that's how I would coach it. I would make my player hit an overhead, and at the same time, right as they hit it, they yell out what zone their feet are in. 3, 2, and initially I will almost say, all right, here's some 1s, Will. Okay, I'm going to back you up. Here's some 2s. Here's some 3s. You feel the difference? Okay, now you call it, and I'll let you try it. So they start making decisions. Like what you receive should determine what you send. And when it comes to overheads, too few people do that. They just go, I don't care what I receive. I'm sending back a bomb because I'm a good player, damn it. And I'm on this shot. And they get into trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. So for zone 3, where should we be playing that ball? Obviously not a 10 on the power, maybe a 6 or 7.
So directionally, remember playing double. So I'm in zone 3. You're probably seeing that I got it. You're going to be around the service line, maybe moving back into zone 2. And I'm going to hit it dependent on the opponent. So if one of the opponents is stupidly at the net, then I can maybe hit it towards him and he won't be able to react in time. If they're both back, I like to hit cross court because the assumption is you're going to beat cross court, right? So as soon as you see that I am in position to hit the overhead, you should start releasing and going back towards the net. You don't need to be back there cheering me on. And if I hit a cross court, that means I've put the ball in front of you. It's going to be coming. So let's say I'm in the deuce or the ad side and you're on the deuce side. I get an overhead. I go back to zone 3. I hit it cross court, which is to the ad side.
Yeah.
That's right in front of your deuce side. So I give you, the net guy who's in better position, a higher chance to get involved in the next shot. If I were to have taken that ball, to the deuce side, you're over there on the deuce side, you're cross court. The guy doesn't feel your presence. There's no pressure there.
Right.
So
it's a better way to set up your partner at the net.
Yeah. And it's assuming I got some gas on the overhead. Not if I'm falling back and I hit a 1 mile an hour overhead that they're going to charge and kill. Not so much. This is like a normal overhead where I got a little bit of power on it. That's directionally where I go. My partners, I got real good. Like if my partner was hitting an overhead, as soon as I could tell he got it, wasn't going to go over him, I would close so stinking hard. I'd be 2 inches from the net. And those guys really felt the pressure. And I got so many easy volleys because we did that little, I call it the pinch. We pinched the team into that corner and put me right in their face. And there I was with severe angle potential.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the going cross court, that ball is going to be going over the middle net strap. So the net's lower. And then you're going to have more court as well, right? Cross court, you're going to have more court to miss long. So it just seems like a higher percentage play overall, regardless.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's go through. I have a ton of questions and maybe we'll do a round 2 at some point. But let's go through some drills and games for doubles. You've got your website. What is it? Tennisdrills.tv. Is that right?
Yeah. So here's the best thing. Maybe you can post this. I actually have 2 websites, so people get confused. One's for players, one's more for coaches.
Yeah, but we'll link to both of them.
If you just go to capestanytennis.com, on that site, you'll see both. You can either go the one for coaches, the one for players. So that's just one URL, capestany.com. But I'm kind of considered the drill guy because this is what my website is. I got coaches from 65 different countries that subscribe to the drills website. But I also have courses, and one of the courses I have is Pro Practice Secrets, where I teach club players, how to practice with each other. I mean, I'm not saying don't practice with your pro. I'm a pro. I want people practicing with a pro. But the best ones are doing more than that. So for doubles, here's a couple. And you can actually probably Google this. Cuban Davis Cup. It's a video I made. It's a drill. It's a drill that morphed into a tournament. It was so popular as a drill that it morphed into a tournament. And it was a great tournament for us. So basically, you could do this with 4 people. Let's say Will and I are playing. Well, you and I are on one side, and we're playing Roger and Federer on the other side, or Fed and Rafa. All right. So it's a cross-court game. So we don't serve. We don't bounce the ball and do normal serving. We just feed it. So I'm at the baseline. I'm in the deuce. Across the net for me, and the other cross-court side is Rafa. I feed it, and I rush the net. And Rafa rips across court, and we play it out cross court only. Him staying back, me going up. If I win, our team, even though we play independently, this whole time I'm playing Rafa, you're waiting to play Fed in the ad court. So let's say I win 15-love. Okay, that's our team score. We're up 15-love. As I back up, boom, you feed cross court, you play Federer cross court only. Okay, and then you win. So now it's 30-love. Then I go, and then you go, and then I go. We play a whole game that way. Okay.
And the points are only cross court, and we're playing one after the other, not at the same time.
Right, exactly.
Okay,
And I'll
got
tell you
it.
the logic why. So after the first game, you and I stay the same, but the returners, actually, you and I switch, but the returners don't. So, because that's usually
Okay,
returners don't switch ends.
sure.
So now you play in the deuce. We would say we're up 1-0 in the set. You feed to Rafa, you go in. He passes you. I feed to Fed, I go in now in the ad court. So you play a whole thing like that. After every game, the feeders, you and I switch. So the thing is, if here's what's magical about that game. Um, because it's cross court only, you're going to get touches on the ball. Too
Mhm.
many. The biggest problem people have with their net game and their transition game is that they don't hit enough shots.
Yeah.
So if I hit, I did this research for a college team once, and it was 8-game pro sets, which is almost all colleges. We're at a D3 school, and these were good players, like 5-0 players, so not necessarily scared of the net. And on average, I watched a ton of pro sets. On average, each player in 1 hour hit about 24 volleys.
Mhm.
So for years, I would say this to people: if you want to get better at double or your net, play more doubles. Okay, it's
Yeah.
actually a misnomer. Now, for sure, they hit more volleys in that hour than it would if they played singles. Because singles, you can play an hour, probably hit,
You can hit
5 volleys.
zero.
Yeah, zero. So, but my point is, my misnomer was, I think I was giving homework, just play more doubles, play more doubles. And I realized, holy crap, when I actually counted it, 24 volleys in an hour, that's less than one every 2 minutes.
Mhm.
That's not enough to move. So that game was born, that drill was born out of fixing the problem. And the problem was touches on the ball. So if you
Yeah.
do that game, that's why we don't serve, because serve slows things up. You and I
Mhm.
could play a whole set. It might take freaking 15 minutes to play the whole set. Okay, maybe
Mhm.
10. And you play, and then by the way, after the set, then you and I go the other side, and Rafa and Ted come, and now they're the net rushers. You just
Yeah.
play the game over and over and over. It's super fun. Touch of cross court. I tried it full court, doesn't work. Cross court is good for percentage tennis. Plus,
Mhm.
you can't go around the guy so easily. So you're going to get a lot of touches on the ball. And if you do it long enough, you'll start to get smart. The passers start realizing, I don't want to hit hard here. I want to hit low. And the
Yeah.
volleyers start realizing, why am I always volleying deep? Maybe I should when I get inside zone 2, I should hit a touch volley and get Roth
Hit
off
an
the
angle.
baseline, because
Mhm.
every time I hit it back to him, he does something genius.
Yeah.
So unbelievably good drill. And that would be, if I only have one to recommend, that's it. Cuban Davis Cup. I think there's a
Okay.
video on the internet about me describing it, um, and
Okay.
showing how it would work we did a tournament, and it was the funnest tournament ever, because you
Yeah.
and I would sign up, and instead of playing doubles, we played that. And
Yeah.
if we split sets, which often we did, then we play a tiebreaker. And then if we
Nice.
won, we go forward in the draw or we go in the back draw. And it was unbelievable. And it's almost like a training tournament. But
Yeah.
here's the math. If you play that for 1 hour instead of 24 volleys, you hit over 200 volleys on average.
Mhm.
So do the math. It's not going to take much practice that way to move the dial. If you're a 24-hour volley an hour guy
Yeah.
or gal, good luck.
You're going
I mean,
like
that's just not
10x.
enough. It might take you, 5 years to actually get to 5,000 volleys and be any good at it.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And we'll link to the video in the show notes. And I think the thing, like one of the takeaways for me from you describing that drill is just winning that cross court point in doubles and how important that is. I've mentioned this some on previous episodes and some guests have talked about it, but if you can win that cross court rally most of the time, you're automatically going to be in a better position. You're going to have to, you're not going to have to take as many risks, and the other team's going to be the team that has to kind of take on more risk and to go for that down the line shot that's so low percentage and things like that. So finding drills to practice winning that cross court rally is super, super important.
Yeah, that's a great drill. That's helped tons of my own players for sure.
So a couple more questions here. What are some common mistakes you see on volley or half volley technique?
I think on volley technique, it's how you accept the ball. So I have this video where I describe so many people that I've coached that say, "Oh, I don't volley well," you know,
Mm-hmm.
it could be two things. It could be technical, right? They're swinging too much or whatever. So I
Sure.
like to take a can of tennis ball, like literally a can,
Hmm.
um, and hold it so in my hand like I would a volley, so that the circle, the opening is facing you, and then you toss me balls, and I try to catch it in the can, because
Hmm.
I can't take a racket back. No one would do that. I'd kind of get the hole facing you, and I do this little motion. So it's a really clever little drill to help with technique, particularly for people that swing too big. The reason people swing too big is because you and I are more experienced. So I might take a volley coming in, and just with about 1 foot of racket head motion, I can knock off a pretty hard volley. Well,
Hmm.
if you're a 3-0, you do 1 foot, it doesn't go anywhere. So you feel like, oh, I want to hit it hard. So when I swing 4 feet, it's more likely your racket is moving at the right time. But now
Hmm.
you sacrifice them. You sacrifice timing, and fastballs are a nightmare and stuff like that. So that's the technical side. But the strategy side, I think, is how you take it. So many people, I have this video. I have a ball machine shooting, and it goes and lands right in the middle of no man's land. Okay,
Hmm.
same ball all the time. And I kind of talk about the ball. I go, this could be a typical ball coming your way. And then I stand right in zone 4. So this ball's bouncing at my feet, right?
Okay.
So this volley, this half volley, I guess, is a nightmare because it's at my feet. But then I
Hmm.
move 5 steps up, and now that same exact ball, I haven't touched the ball machine, is now volleyed by my thigh, and it's immensely easier. Then
Yeah.
I go a couple more steps up, and now it's a volley by my chest. And I
Yeah.
go, so it's the same ball. It's the ball
Hmm.
machine is coming. It's how I accept it. So there's this weird thing where people, I'm not good at the net, and so they're tentative. So they go in a little bit, just enough to give themselves the worst possible shot,
Yeah.
and then they talk to themselves. Oh, see, I suck. Another
Yeah.
one at my foot. Well, if you were positionally better, so that's if I can show that to someone and get them to kind of realize, oh yeah, I'm only
Right.
doing this volley, which is the hardest version. If I actually was a little braver and got into the service line, that same volley is right by my belly button, and it's a lot easier. Same exact
Yeah.
ball. So the
Yeah.
ball
It's just a
machine,
position thing. Yeah.
yeah, the ball machine is helpful because they know I'm not messing with it. If I feed it, they think I'm just feeding it easier. So I just put the
Okay.
ball machine. And I say, let's take a field trip. You and I are up here. Oh, these are tough. Let's go 3 feet up. Oh, a little easier. Let's go 4 feet up. Oh my God, 5 feet up. This is easy. I could put this away all day long. So it's really that's kind of how I like to teach the volley. Make sure
Hmm.
the technique is good. Um, but then I guess the last thing I would say about volleys that I think is a high mistake ratio is always volleying deep.
Hmm.
That's what we're told. Oh, look at how good that volley was. He stuck that volley. But
Yeah.
if I'm playing Will, and what you want, if I'm at the net, you want me to volley deep because that's where you are. Not very many people at the baseline saying, oh, Jorge's at the net. I hope he hits a drop volley and brings me in because I want. They're not saying that. They love the fact that you're there, and they want to be right where they're comfortable to begin with. I'm at the
Hmm.
baseline, so
Yeah.
you do have to volley deep. But I believe that once you get inside the service line, you should be looking to volley short
Mm.
and stop volleying back to where they are.
Yeah.
I have people who play pretty high level tennis, and that I swear in their whole life it never occurred to them to purposely volley short. They might do it
Yeah.
by accident. Maybe they shank one and it ends up being a clean winner, and they still don't put 2 and 2 together. Oh, it was a horrible volley. You saw the guy didn't even get it, right? Yeah, but I go, what if you could do that on purpose? And then I have a pretty good drop volley, so I can do it. Just I go, watch, go back. I'm gonna deep, 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 and then I'll hit a drop volley. They won't even come close to getting it, and I'll do that
Right.
5 times. And I go, so what do you think? Is this? What if you had
Is
this?
this a good idea?
I can
Yeah.
just sprinkle this dust, and you have the shot now. You're gonna ruin a whole bunch of people that you're unnecessarily losing to right now because you never developed that. It didn't occur to you. So that's a big one for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. A few things that kind of came to my mind there. So one is the positioning. So I see so many players, they'll miss a volley down by their ankles and they'll be standing maybe at the service line. And it was a ball that was like floating real slow over the net. And then they miss it down by their ankles. And then they practice their technique in between the point.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there on the sidelines watching, going crazy. Like, The reason you missed that is not because of your technique. It's because you didn't move forward. That was an easy high forehand volley for you to put away, and you just let it come to you, and it dropped all the way to your feet. So
Yes.
that's one thing I want people to remember. Another thing, is that angle and not hitting it back to the opponent. This is something that I myself need to work on. But yeah, volleys forward inside the service line, especially if they're above the net, working on the shorter angle volleys or the drop volleys, like you said. I do feel like when it's maybe a little bit below the net, or if they're able to kind of dip it low at your feet, a lot of people may not have that drop volley in that case, but
Right.
something to work on for sure. And getting that in combination with, depth when you need it. To use that variety. So 2 more questions, and then let's get into some rapid fire. If there's one thing you could change about tennis coaching, what would it be?
I think I've been a coach and developer for a while now, and I do have a lot of content. Most of my content's actually for coaches. I think that probably the number one pain point that I see coaches have is that when they run group lessons, I'll talk about groups, and the 2 types of lessons a coach will give is group lesson or private lesson. So when it comes to group lessons, too many drills that are being used are just boring. They're not purposeful, and they're not energetic, and it's just kind of a poor drill. When I started my drills website and I started speaking about that, if you go to any tennis coaches conference and there's a title of a presentation that says drills, I mean, it's the most attended thing. This is what we do for a living. 40 hours a week, 30 hours a week. You're running drills for people, group lessons, clinics, drills, whatever word you want to use. It's group drilling. Okay. So that is the problem. And then when it comes to private lessons, I think the biggest thing that we struggle with as a country is private lessons tend to be Band-Aid lessons. So let's say I got Will, he's a 12-year-old. If you were my 12-year-old, we wouldn't be doing Band-Aids. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to have a sheet that I call the vision sheet. Even though you're 12, I'm going to try to figure out how you should play when you're 18. And maybe I look at your size and your temperament. And, I met Luke Jensen when he was 14 years old. He had a size 14 foot. Okay, well, it wasn't too hard to figure out he was going to be a big dude. And he could serve lefty, 100 miles an hour both ways when he was a little kid. So no one thought, oh, he's going to be a steady baseliner. So you can predict this for the most part. But then once I have that informs everything I do. And hey, when you're 15, maybe we have to change it because we do. But at least the roadmap, I have my 12-year-old Will, and we're headed towards 18 years old, and we know what we're doing. And then more micro-wise, every semester that I work with you, we should have projects. So projects are things you want to accomplish. I want to add a second serve. I want to learn a drop shot, and I want to improve my consistency. No more than 3. So that every private I have, let's say we're having this right now in Michigan. In September, kids are starting up with their pros. They're going to be with that pro every Tuesday at 6 for the whole indoor season or whatever the times are. All our pros have vision sheets that they can show the parent so they know I'm not just fixing it. Too many of our lessons, the kid comes, hey, what do you want to work on? I don't know. Well, didn't you play a tournament last week? Yeah, my serve stunk. Okay, let's do a serve lesson right now. And maybe that lesson is good, but it's not connected. It's just dabbling. So I could go a whole school year, give 40 lessons. And if that parent asked me in May, okay, what did you do with my Jimmy? They had him 40 private lessons that paid a lot of money. And a lot of pros would be like, well, we did everything. I want to
gotten a lot better.
I'll tell you exactly what we did. We figured out in September he was going to be an all quarter. And in the fall, we did these 3 things. This one's done because they already fixed the second serve. Now we just recently added, a slicer in the backhand because he doesn't have, and that's a lesson. I mean, that's a pro that's developing a player as opposed to just taking their money and doing Band-Aids all over. So that would, if I could change and had some magic powder to do it, that's what I would do. Better drills, because that's still the number one thing that engages people and how they experience their time with a pro. And then better, purposeful, roadmap for private lessons.
Yeah, that's makes sense. It's a really good answer. It seems like almost especially for the private lessons, there's just, as a coach, you need to be thinking about what tools do we need to add to this player's toolkit, um, in alignment with that vision. So what, I don't know if you'll have an answer for this, but I wanted to ask, because I usually ask all the guests, what do you feel like needs to be done to make pro doubles more popular?
Well, I think it's popular. The problem is it doesn't get airtime nearly as much, right? And we know the stats. We know that, people don't tune into that as much as they tune into singles. But we also know that the vast majority of people watching play doubles, more doubles players at my club for sure, and in most clubs. So I think back in the day when they were about to kill it and the Bryan brothers kind of revived it and they went to, they changed a bunch of the rules, like, hey, it's not going to be 3 sets. We're going to play a tiebreaker. I honestly think that whenever doubles is on TV, I enjoy watching it, and I think I like watching. Now, if I had to pick a doubles match or Rafa's playing on Grandstand, I'm probably going to go watch Rafa because it's Rafa. But I think step one would be to give it more airtime. It's some of the best points. I mean, there's more.
Yeah, it is.
During doubles points than there are during singles. Although the current U.S. Open is doing pretty darn good. It's
yeah, they are.
Some amazing tennis there. But I think that's the number one issue. Some of the singles players, I don't think you're ever going to get all the top singles players playing doubles, which would help. If you start Rafa and Federer and Zverev and T and everybody's playing doubles, well, they're an attraction. But they get so much more money for singles that it's not economically smart for them to spend more time in the court. I'm going to do my 5 setter here at the Open. I got to get recovering. I can't be playing doubles, So I think that's a problem. I don't think that problem's going to be fixed. So you're left with, the best, most famous players not playing doubles for the most part at most tournaments, especially the slams. So I think the TV time, I don't think any more rule changes are necessary. I think I didn't love it when they went to a tiebreaker for the third, but I get it. I think, it's probably just as important. I wouldn't change that back necessarily. I think it did help. And I do think that there was a dominant team like the Bryan brothers that was a little more helpful. Now it's not quite so dominant, so it's a little different. There's not a quote unquote famous double. I mean, the Bryan brothers were almost a household name.
Right.
I'm not sure I could tell you who the number 1 seed is right now at the men's doubles or the women's doubles at the Open.
Yeah.
But I knew the Bryan brothers. So I think, maybe if there was another dominant team.
Yeah, they change partners a lot. So it's tough to get kind of a storyline or a kind of a fan base like the Bryan brothers had. Those are all good answers. And I had Rajiv Ram on earlier this year, and he said he actually liked the 10-point tiebreaker, but he wanted to get rid of the no ad, which it's not a thing at the US Open. And at the US Open, they play a full third anyways at the majors, but in a lot of the smaller tournaments, and I think even some of the Masters 1000s, they're playing no ad. And that's a huge,
it feels like a lot more luck involved.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Honestly. The other thing that I think would be cool, and it might get the top players to play, if there was an occasional, even if it's once or twice a year, just doubles only tournament, like a doubles tournament. Like Fed and Rafa and Novak, if they're trying to win a slam, that's the only thing they care about. And they got to play 5 sets. They're not going to take an extra ounce of energy to play doubles. But if they even have to play singles, if it was just doubles, and there was nothing but doubles, and then maybe they would play, that would be kind of cool. And give it like some kind of Grand Slam or big time prize money so that those top guys play. And I think it would be cool. I mean, Labor Cup's kind of like that. You said that's the first and only time you get to see all those top guys playing doubles for the most part.
Yeah. But that would be awesome if they could promote it the right way. I think that would do really well.
Yeah.
All right. So let's do a few rapid fire questions and then I'll let you go. Let's start with what's your favorite tennis book?
The Inner Game of Tennis. Read it a long time ago. It's from Dr. Yeah, if you play tennis, and even if you're medium to not great with your mental skills, that's the book. I think every pro player has read it. It's a little old now, but it's timeless. And
Yeah.
Inner Game of Tennis, Timothy Galloway, I think.
Yeah. Highly recommend. What's your favorite non-tennis book?
Non-tennis book? Well, it's a little bit of a tennis book, but the one by Dr. Jim Lair, it's
Okay.
I wish I knew the name of it now because I have it's right over there. I think it talks
It's
about
okay.
winning
I'll
with
look it up.
character. Yeah, it's all about winning with character.
Hmm.
That's a really good one because it's not super tennis specific. It's more like sports specific. And it talks about like character being super important for all development of thing. It's really helps people kind of get their purpose right.
Awesome. What's your favorite tournament?
Well, uh, I visited um, Australian Open. It was amazing. I
Hmm.
spoke there once. I visited Wimbledon. That was amazing. I visited the U.S. Open. Never been to the French.
Hmm.
Probably they're also cool, but Wimbledon being Wimbledon, it was like so unexpected. I mean, everything was it's like a botanical garden in that place. It's just
Yeah.
crazy in the grass. So I think that was probably my favorite. But visit. But I have to say the U.S. Open is really almost tied because I generally work at the U.S. Open. I have a couple gigs that I do there. I haven't done it for a couple of years because of COVID, but
Hmm.
I love going to the city and being a part of it, and helping out on the fan experience court. But yeah, probably Wimbledon or the U.S. Open. I've only been to Wimbledon once. I go all the time to the U.S. Open.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. Yeah. US Open's a great event. Um, do you still play tennis a lot?
Unfortunately, I don't. I have two really
No.
bad knees that aren't doing so hot. I got to get some
Oh,
operations here soon. I can walk pain free, and but I don't play
yeah.
that anymore.
So when you did play, what was your favorite position on the court?
Well, I was a net rusher in singles, so that's probably why I played better doubles than I did singles. But
Hmm.
I liked the net. I was fast twitch. I had really good hands. I could get back pretty good for an overhead. But the other reason I like coming in so much is because I wasn't that good. I had a decent forehand, but my backhand, I went from a two-hander to a one-hander. My backhand side has always been semi-liability, so it was
Hmm.
never a good strategy for me to grind from the baseline. Plus, my temperament is such that I'm not. If I hit five, even if I'm hitting well and I hit 15 balls from the baseline, I'm like, that's not fun to me. I want to get in
Sure.
there and finish it quicker. So yeah, I was a front guy, attacker guy.
Okay. So maybe like server's partner.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, server or server's partner.
Okay. Yeah. I should have phrased the question a little differently.
Gotcha.
Um, okay. And then what's your favorite play in doubles? So for example, for me, my favorite play in doubles is to poach off the return.
Yeah, I think. Well, so when I'm at the net. Okay, my
Yeah.
partner serving, I'm at the net. Um, Somewhat related. I always try to start in zone two. So I'm in the back half of no man's
Mm-hmm.
land. I'm inside the service line. But the key to me, I don't even know if it's a play, but it's a technique, is as my partner serves, I migrate from zone two into zone one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you should stand in the middle and get ready because if you're upper body ready, it doesn't mean you're lower body ready. So all
Mm-hmm.
the best teams, I call it pre-movement. They're not just waiting for the ball to be struck and then trying to move. They're creeping. Think of a returner. They're
Yeah.
creeping, and when the ball's hit, they're already moving. So they got it quick. They're quick out of the block. So I do that
Mm-hmm.
when I'm in the net guy. And by the way, it's a great teaching technique. I have a lot of people who don't poach well, and it's because they're only ready. I mean, they think they're ready. They're up here and they're super. Their racket's ready, but if you look down below, they're completely flat-footed. So the ball gets hit, they first got to get up, and then they got to go, and they're slow all of a sudden. So
Yeah.
I think that move where I'm kind of pre-moving before the return is struck is my favorite tactic to use.
Got it. All right. Last question. So what is a tennis story that you've never told anyone? Or it can just be your favorite story. Some people don't have one that they've never told anyone.
There's a story I tell. I don't tell it too much. When I was in college, I played in this big tournament at my rival club in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I was pretty good at that time. I was probably 5.5 level. I was probably 23 years old, 22.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a kid that grew up in town. I won't say his name. I always was able to beat him. Okay. I'd beat him 3-3 on a typical day. Well, it had been a couple years since I saw him. He went to college. I went to college. And now we're playing in this tournament. And it was kind of like a fundraiser tournament. And it wasn't at my club. It was at the other club, which was our rival, where he happened to be a summer teaching pro. Okay. So I go to this tournament and I'm in the finals of the men's and against him. And I show up for the finals and I'm shocked at how many people are there. There's like, they set up all these chairs. I mean, there's like maybe a couple hundred people watching this non-sanctioned match. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking to myself, holy crap, this will be fun, you know? But I haven't seen him. And then my brain, I'm thinking I'm going to win 3-3 because I always beat this guy. Well, I start out and two things happen. I played normal and he was outplaying me. I was down 1-4. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, could this guy have actually passed me? Or there was a piece of me that thought maybe he's treeing at the moment. He's not going to be able to keep it up. But I wasn't sure. I was kind of, and at the same time, the crowd was unusually hostile. They were like, every time he had a winner, they were screaming and they were like half booing me. So I was like, man, this is kind of intense for this like non-meaningful match. So I go on, I lose the first set like 6-2. And I'm thinking, okay, reset. I'm hoping that he lowers his level. And I kind of say to myself, let's just play some long points and not get out of here too quickly. And I'm down 2-3, I'm down 2-4. And at about 2-4 or 3-4, he came to the net and I hit a lob and he smashed it. I dug it out. I ended up lobbing like 4 of his over his back. And on the 4th one, he nets it. Mm-hmm. And then he yells out loud enough for everybody to hear, damn it, I knew you couldn't keep this up. He said that out loud.
Oh my gosh.
And guess what I thought? I go, at that point, I had kind of mentally decided, yeah, this guy is actually better than me now. So bummer. But when he said that,
so now
I was like, I knew it. He is true. And that made me buckle down. And I just, for the next couple of games, I just said, I'm not going to miss. I'm going to play long points because I figured he's going to be more nervous. He's already agitated. And slowly but surely, I got back in that set. I won that set like 7-5. He was super pissed. I won the third set like 6-2. But oh my gosh. It's such a weird story because I was bumping back and forth about, I really didn't know. I go, people have passed me before that I used to be able to beat. I go, this might be one of those cases, bummer. But when he said that, it totally gave me life. Like I knew it. He is treeing. He won't be able to keep this up. I'm still better than him. And I try a little, it gave me encouragement. And I literally think I probably would have lost that match had he not uttered those words in frustration.
Not said that. Wow. That's a good story. Awesome. So Jorge, we'll close it out here. Any final requests for the audience?
No, I appreciate you guys listening and get after some of that content in the show notes. If you could just put CapestanyTennis.com, they can go to either site that they want. A lot of the player site's full of free stuff. So there's all kinds of, free tennis lessons there. You can even get a free mental toughness course. And if you're a coach, you can check out the other one. So
awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Jorge. Thanks everyone
for listening. Thanks for having me on. Thanks for everybody for listening.
If you're a doubles player, you'll love our weekly doubles newsletter. Every Thursday, we send you doubles tips and strategies to help you improve your game and become a smarter player. When you sign up, you'll get a free 10-page guide on how to play with more confidence and dominate at the net in doubles. You can go to thetennistribe.com to sign up now.